I'd like to welcome everyone to Breakfast with WACh. And for anyone who's not familiar with Breakfast with WACh, this is an event sponsored by the Global Center for Integrated Health of Women, Adolescents, and Children, Global WACh. And it's a wonderful opportunity to bring in visiting scholars and scientists who are visiting us at the University of Washington to share their work more widely with both the Global WACh and the broader University of Washington community. And it's my honor today to present three visitors from the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research who have been collaborating with Global WACh over the past year. And they'll be presenting on their work on a large project called SARMAAN, which is focused on reducing infants and child mortality in Nigeria. And we have three visitors, one of whom will be presenting today, but briefly, I would just like to introduce Professor Oliver Ezechi, if you don't mind waving. He's the principal investigator of the SARMAAN project at NIMR. He's trained as a gynecologist, and he's the director of research and the head of the Center for Population Studies at NIMR. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Adesola Musa. She's a chief research fellow and biostatistician at NIMR, and she leads a lot of the biostatistical and data management work for SARMAAN, which we'll be hearing about today. And then our speaker is Dr. Abideen Salako. He's a pediatrician and a research fellow at NIMR, and he's a study coordinator for the SARMAAN project, which we'll be talking about. And he's a research fellow at the Clinical Sciences Department at NIMR and the director for the Center for Excellence in Children and Adolescent Health Research, where he has the responsibility of promoting the well-being of children through evidence-based research. He has a lot of interest and a lot of experience working in research in child health and in sickle cell disease and pediatric oncology and pediatric hematology in particular. And I just want to say it's been such an honor to start working with this group over the past year. NIMR is full of really extensive experience and a wealth of studies that I know are of particular interest to Global WACh collaborators. But what I've noticed most with the opportunity to spend time with this team over the past 2 weeks is their really commitment to the mission of their work. And they always bring up, the importance of thinking about each child behind the numbers. And I think we'll hear more about that today. So over to you, Dr. Salako.
Good morning, everyone. Before I go ahead, I think introduced, but you need to know where we are from and who we are. We are Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, the foremost research institute in the country and in sub-Saharan populace. Our history dates back to the early 20th century when we started with yellow fever, when nobody had the first yellow fever vaccine actually was from the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, and then that has changed the landscape. In recent time, the institute is thinking of consolidating more into an Institute of Medical Research Council to be able to do much more than we are doing presently. These are organogram. We have 4 research units, clinical science department, which houses about the largest is about 5. We have the molecular biology and innovation. It's all about innovation and thinking in molecular perspective. We have the Department of Microbiology, which houses 3, and that houses almost 3 of the WHO recommended centers for validation and testing. And the Department of Public Health, that focuses more on neglected tropical disease and other public health issues with respect to epidemiology and policy and biochemistry and nutrition, which houses nutrition, malaria, molecular technology advancement, since that is our body, amongst other the administrative buildings in the institution. These are our mandates. Our mandate dates back to 1977. Yes, communicable disease, non-communicable disease, translating basic science to implementation science and bedside knowledge, developing human infrastructure, and most importantly, as we do all this, it must be able to reflect our policy and the change in our ecosphere. These are our capability. We have basic science experts, clinical science experts, public health, and operational science and implementation science, which we are delving more into in recent time. These are our collaborators, and it cuts across almost all the disease that beckons us in Africa and in Nigeria. Again, University of Washington and also some big Pfizer institution, significant institution in the United States, have continued to collaborate with us to help find answers to those problems that are issues. These are areas of research in recent time. Malaria, yes, you know, we're endemic for that. HIV/AIDS, Sub-Saharan Africa still remains the highest. HPV, anti-cervical cancer, hepatitis B, and Bacillus carcinoma. Tuberculosis still remains down home with us. Non-communicable disease, maternal and childhood. If we do all these without maternal and childhood, then the future is almost as good as possible. So that is always. And then clinical trials, because we are becoming to understand that we need to try the drugs in our own population to understand the genetic diversity that comes with it. Sickle cell disease is home with us. Nigeria remains the epicenter of the disease, and it's a prerogative that we continue to look into that. Vaccine development, COVID-19 has changed a lot of things. It's starting to reawaken us, and then we are thinking in that perspective in recent times. These are some of the ongoing research, and if you look at them, they cut across the common diseases that bother us. HIV, malaria. We are looking at even HIV, not just at the peripheral level, trying to understand what these drugs and HIV itself does to the immune system with respect to bone loss. And these are collaborative studies that we are running. And again, like I said, we are being in the landscape of implementation science, the eye care, trying to take care how better you can do it for us to ensure that we use the burden of HIV in adolescents. Again, you know, that is a population that is still a headache for not just Nigeria, but for the world entirely in coping the HIV pandemic. And many more that we are looking into, and that ends. In recent time, the big ones are safety and immunogenicity of fractional doses. We knew what COVID-19 was and the challenges that came with it. Getting vaccines to every part of the world was an issue. And the Institute trying to quickly get vaccines across the board for every Nigerian that needs it, decided to embark on this to understand whether fractional doses can help answer the question, as it's been shown in yellow fever and measles in other parts of the world. And most importantly, safety and antimicrobial resistance of mass administration of azithromycin for children 1 to 11 months. Again, you know the story of our children. You know the story of infant mortality and under-5 mortality in the country. Nigeria, if you can reduce the under-5 mortality in Nigeria, then the world is a safer place. And soon and fast, we can get to that dream of sustainable development goal of reducing under-5 mortality to less than 35 by 1,000 by birth. If you face Nigeria, then the world will be a better place than every child. So just an overview of what the SARMAAN project is all about. I'll go through our overview, looking at these outlines, and then we share some of our immediate findings, which are preliminary because we are still on the field, and what our next steps are with respect to this. The SARMAAN project, like I did said earlier, it's a unique implementation science project. You look at safety and antimicrobial resistance of mass administration of azithromycin for children 1 to 11 months. This was the fallout of the WHO recommendation that says in countries and places where you have infant and under-5 mortality greater than 60 and 80 per 1,000 live birth, then this mass distribution of azithromycin should be a supportive or a collaborative effort in driving, in addition to an site survival strategy, in driving that indices down as quick as possible so that the world can be a better place for our children. But we felt as a country, it's not just rolling out WHO recommendations that is most important. We need to save the molecule, and we also need to start thinking of the safety of our children. Because again, the future, if you gain something, you might also be creating another bug. So based on that, the Federal Ministry of Health, understanding the capacity of Nigerian medical research, set up a consortium, and we're lucky within that consortium. University of Washington is part of that consortium, Sightsavers, Speak Up Africa, and other governments of the states that have high indices greater than even the WHO recommendation to look at the mass distribution at the pilot scale. Again, because this is the first time it's going to be distributed in children 1 to 11 months, except for the model trial, which was a randomized control trial. And so that consortium was established. NIMR was supposed to anchor the research arm of it in collaboration with the University of Washington, leading us side by side, because you are the expert on implementation science. And other partners, Sightsavers, who are the drug implementers, Speak Up Africa, our the voice to Nigeria, to the Nigerian population, and beyond. And so again, these are the states of choice: Abia, Akwa Ibom, Kano, Kebbi, and Jigawa. Kano, Kebbi, Jigawa and Sokoto, their endemic, their infant and infant mortality goes above 100 per 1,000 life birth. While for Abia and Akwa Ibom, it's just the borderline of about 80. And so the aim of this study is one, to guide, to inform policy, and to see how well we can sustain this towards reducing the disparity in diseases of our children who have high mortality in diseases. And these are the two main objectives: to determine the effect of malnutrition by Azithromycin among children 1 to 11 months, on the safety and the pattern of antimicrobial resistance, to determine the cost effectiveness, visibility, and acceptability of delivering this drug on different platforms in Nigeria. Trachoma, which is known for the Tropical disease and has been at the forefront of handling Azithromycin, seasonal malaria chemoprophylaxis, immunization platforms in Kebbi, Jigawa, Kano, Abia, Akwa Ibom, and Sokoto State. These platforms are also in tandem with the recommendation of WHO, because the aim is not to create a parallel system to this platform, but most importantly, to strengthen this platform and to make this platform a better machinery for delivering child survival strategy across the country. So for the antimicrobial resistance, we are looking at nasopharyngeal and rectal samples, and we'll be taking samples at baseline, pre-administration of the drug, at every 6 months, after administration of the drugs, 12, 24 months. And similarly, and then we are looking at 6 core organisms, and also been identified as WHO as causes of child mortality and morbidity. If you agree with me, strep pneumonia remains a problem across the globe, and Klebsiella pneumonia. Staph aureus, you are looking at it because it's conventional commensals. And again, you don't want it to pick up the antimicrobial resistance bug, because if it picks it up and becomes invasive, then the hope for that child, again, getting a cure becomes a big problem. E. coli, Salmonella, and Shigella. Yes, we understand rotavirus, viral and common causes. But again, we need to keep looking at this. These are organisms or bugs that are creating problems within the diarrhea ecosphere for us back home and across the globe. For the cost effectiveness, we will be looking at cost per child treated, cost data will be ingredient approach, and a full analysis of the cost will be done. And then it's important we continue to understand in the context that we distribute this drug. What are the determinants? What are the societal issues? What are the family issues? And so a qualitative perspective of trying to understand visibility, acceptability of this is important, because if the government is going to scale up, then you have to scale up understanding the cultural diversity across the Nigerian ecosystem. So what is our methodology? It's a prospective community-based study. Every child 1 to 11 months to get the drug, but not every child 1 to 11 months will be sampled for antimicrobial resistance. And these are the platforms again we are doing. It's hope that this project spans over 36 months. Yes, it started long before the 36 months rollout, 24 months before implementation. And the last 6 months, the aim is to go back when drugs have not been distributed again, to again monitor the antimicrobial resistance. And this is in tandem with WHO recommendation, because surveillance has to end with it. If you are going to continue for a long time, then that's thinking of surveillance. How do you continue to monitor antimicrobial resistance? How do you continue to monitor safety on a larger scale? And then that will be guiding that. These are the platforms and these are the times the activities will be done across each of the states. We are hoping that per cycle will be reaching out approximately about 500,000 children across the state, and a total of intervention by the end of 4 years, we should be reaching approximately 2 million children, and hopefully we'll be helping to reduce mortality and morbidity in these children. For the antimicrobial resistance evaluation, these are calculated sample size, 1,054 minimum, with an assumption that's for Jigawa, 152 for Delhi, and a total of 5,901. This will be the minimum sample, because it's an assumption that at least in a household, children 1 to 11 months old, there will be a child. So if you get to that household and there are 2, then you have to sample those 2, while you also distribute drugs for the 2 kids entirely. Where are we thus far? It's been a good journey working side by side with the child and stuff. So all these have been done thus far. We've completed the first and second cycle of the project. You will appreciate that, look at our projected population on just immediately after the activity of the first cycle. For example, in Kano, that we projected 7,000 children in the local government. We have almost double that population similarly in Sokoto, and tells you how quick the population is, how quick, what the fertility rate, again, this is a reflection of what our fertility rate is. These are the coverage. For it, on an average, across board, we have a 4% coverage for multiple azithromycin in children in these different states. And our antimicrobial resistance evaluation sampling, we had more than the projected minimum size. And it's understandable that when we got to some of those households, we had more than 1 children, 1 to 11 months, who we could sample. And that was the assumption which the study was part. So rather than 5,901 children that was projected to be sampled, well, going to the field, it had increased by 1,026. Similarly, in the second circle, this is also what we looked at. Again, the coverage remains the same, but the population had also gone up a bit. Kano is unique in his state, because in Kano you are distributing the drug once annually on the SMC platform. Because again, WHO is asking the question: is biannual as effective as annual therapy? And we are hoping that Kano can provide that answer for us, and we might be able to again give the world a better recommendation and reduce the pressure on the azithromycin itself. So what is this? Just basic demographic characteristics of children across two times. The average of about 6 months that for every household we get, and that tells you tells us something that by the time we go to another cycle, a significant proportion of them will have moved beyond 11 months. Male is still predominant, and the weight is within acceptable levels for that age group. Breastfeeding remains an option, the best option for our children. A lot of mothers are still on exclusive breastfeeding, and that reflects across the different states that we are in. So for the first objective, which is to look at safety and antimicrobial resistance, this is what safety looks like. Very few children have adverse events, and the common adverse event is vomiting, passage of pus to release of feet, which results within 2 hours. Again, baseline, which is after the first administration and after the second administration, and adverse events. So what happens here is that after the first administration, there is a passive monitoring with respect to antimicrobial with respect to adverse events. And in 6 months' time, we went back onto the field to get some record from the site perspective. And the incidence of adverse events is not beyond scale. Again, it shows that the drug is safe. But again, we need to continue to, as you scale up on larger scale, we need to continue to monitor it. And this is what the recall looks like after 6 months. Just an average of about 1% of the population are reporting adverse events. A lot of families are reporting that it's safe, their children didn't have any problem. And again, which is reassuring. But as you go forward, we'll continue to monitor these adverse events. What's our antimicrobial resistance pattern like? We had a total of 12,252 samples in these 6 states. And the antimicrobial resistance prevalence of azithromycin, looking at, so I think I will skip the first one so I can explain better. So we have both nasal and rectal. And for the isolate in each of these 6,126 samples, we had 422 isolates for nasal and 481 for rectal. For the nasal isolate, 367 of them were staph aureus. Strep pneumonia was just 55. E. coli on the rectal was 260. So Shigella 135 and Salmonella 186. If you look at the prevalence of antimicrobial resistance from isolate, then it's in an average of about 20% across the domain. The highest AMR resistance you have is in staph aureus, followed by E. coli, and the others are not as scary as one would think. Again, we need to keep at the back of our mind that in some of these states, NTD has been distributing azithromycin. Yes, not for children 1 to 11 months, but for children who are 1 year and above, as one of the safe strategies in overcoming the neglected tropical disease of sarcoma. And so when we break down to individual organisms, again, if you look at that one, with respect to isolate over the disease and pattern, is an average of about 40%, which is not actually different from what clinical report studies back home are reporting, between 40 and 50%. And again, this is far lower than what model had narrated, about 80% when they looked at it. Even as strep pneumonia alone, it was as high as 80%. And if you look at it with the different organisms, it's again, with respect to isolate, if you look 4 circles, second circle, is not, sorry, for the strep, for the nasal and rectal for the first circle, is still an average of about 40%. So within what is reported in clinical studies, but lower than what was reported in the randomized control trial on WHO recommendation. This is when you break it down to individual organism over the population. So we are looking at the population, we sample the particular number of population per state. If you look at it across over the population, it again is now becomes more reassuring. It drops down from its double digit to a single digit. And we understand why this will be so, because you are looking at it over a larger population. And again, it shows you safe, but we need to continue to monitor this to ensure that we are not going, we are not having a trajectory rise in our antimicrobial resistance as the implementation rolls out. So this is what the second cycle looks like. We had more samples, over about 100 above what we had in the first circle, 6,034 each. Isolate 473 for nasal and rectal 158. Shigella and Salmonella this time around were not, and Shigella wasn't seen, but Salmonella burden is a lot lower. And the NIMR, because there are 3 organisms who are antimicrobial resistant, E. coli and Staph aureus tops the league, and Salmonella is just still hanging there, hasn't changed remarkably. In fact, I would say we are even lesser. And we understand why this could be so, because you have given antibiotics, you have clearance of some antimicrobial bug, and as you go into the next circle, then you might start to see what the true picture of your antimicrobial resistance pattern is in subsequent circle. And again, this is in keeping with one model I reported. The first and second circle, there was a drop, and by the third and fourth circle, there was a trajectory rise. So a rise that even after 2 years, there was another drop. We are not yet at the end, but we are looking at it. And then there's another descriptive where there's a rise. In fact, there was no rise, it just plateaued all through. So we don't know what the Nigerian ecosphere will play into understanding the differences in our sociocultural activities. And again, at population base, if you look at it, we have not, yes, there seems to be some rise, but if you put them on an average, we are seeing an average about 3, 2 and 3 is not out of margin. And this is just 6 months after administration of the drug. We look at the range of 2.1. If you go back in the last population stage, also it's about 2 points. So we are still safe, though we are watching closely. This is when you look at it. This might when you look at it, when you put all the antimicrobial prevalences together, I decided to sum them up, and then look at them over population. What we have is, apart from Abia, there was a drop in the antimicrobial resistance. But in Abia, it seems to be playing in another direction. And then we need to understand that Kano, Kebbi, Jigawa, and Sokoto predominantly are northern part, not as developed as Abia, though yes, we're in the rural Abia, but the rural Abia is seriously far ahead of the northern part of the country. Again, this is what you have when you compare first circle and second circle. And then you appreciate further when we disaggregate by samples and by organisms. On the rectal, and again, you can see there is a drop in the second circle evaluation for both staph and strep pneumoniae. And then Abia again is still playing the same demograph that you saw on the last chart, where Abia is an opposite to everybody. That's what we are still getting with respect to that. But predominantly is small staph orange. Strep pneumonia, yes, more in the second circle. We didn't see in the first circle. But like I said, this is an ongoing study, an ongoing community-based evaluation. We hope we'll be able to tell a better narrative as we go forward. Same thing for the rectal samples. First circle, you had more isolate with respect to each of these organisms. My second circle, there were a lot less. The explanation for this is obvious, but we will look further and understand what happened in the third and fourth circle, and then after the implementation phase of the project. This is a busy slide. Again, we decided to disaggregate by the two borderline age, 1 to 5 months, and 6 to 11. And if we look across the children who are older, 6 to 11 months, seem to have more bugs than the children who are 1 to 5 months. And a lot of things can explain for this. They are becoming more inquisitive, they are crawling around, starting to pick things. Yes, in addition to the maternal eagerness to want to get every sick child well. And so again, antimicrobial resistance is just over the counter for us, not as controlled as you have in the US here. And this is what it looks like. I know this is a busy slide. Again, 6 to we just decided to set disaggregate, and it's almost reflecting what we saw in the last slide. This is what happened in the second circle. It hasn't changed significantly. It's still more in children who are 6 to 11 months compared to children who are 1 to 5 months. Again, so like I said, we need to continue to understand what is the contextual perspective to which our people will accept this drug. How do they see the drug? What is their perception? If you are going to take it to policy, you are not going to pass it down their throat. The world is becoming more educated. Even the person in the rural village is becoming more aware as we become more global. So you need to put their context into whatever policy you are implementing. And so with a few of what we have, a lot of parents are willing to take the drugs. They understand, again, that this might be a game changer for them, in addition to immunization program, nutritional support. And they are willing, they believe if it is going to change the landscape, then they are willing. The community drug distributors, who are the drivers of this, who without them, really, this might not have been possible. Because imagine, NIMR wouldn't have been able to get to everywhere. They believe that people will accept the drug. Again, we should put that back of our mind. They've seen some of the effects with respect to trachoma. So the story is we're having is looking positive. And with Jigawa, is again, I'm very happy. It's not it's beginning to my children, it's not going to make them sick. We'll be willing to support it. Distribute the drugs to baby in Sokoto is welcome, as we know that it might be an opportunity to help our babies. We want the drugs because it's going to prevent our children from having diseases. These are transcribed from the colloquial Hausa or Igbo language to English language by a qualitative expert. And in sustainability, people are willing to give some degree of support, pay something small, provided government continues to support this. In Kano, people are willing to pay, mothers and fathers are willing to pay. Yes, there's small analysis to this, just to share some of the immediate recalls based on our immediate analysis. In Jigawa, as much as they are willing to pay, they are hoping that they will continue to ask for support to help subsidize this. We will contribute to drugs if the project ends, because it's going to be helping our children. These are programs where we can ask the state for assistance to support us. This from the heads of institution, believing that they will continue to request for government support for this. With respect to visibility, we'll be happy if they train more. So again, capacity building. That's what this project has also brought. And it's going to take significant people off the street. And they're looking at it with respect to capacity building, having more arms to or arsenal to support the well-being of children. It will be better to train and employ community drug distributors. This is what we have adopted. And again, they're advocating for more. Because if we can reduce the poverty body, then mortality also will reduce significantly. Then I can go out and earn for the day. Then they are hoping that we don't just drive it directly from the government. Come to our locals, use our imams and traditional leaders. We believe in them more. They are not the politicians. They tell us and they give it to us, rather than drive us through the politicians. So engage our imams, engage our community leaders, engage our town criers, and we are sure, we are reassuring you, we will get more of people to get the drugs, because when they talk to us, we trust them, we believe them more than politicians. Drug is being a program is successful in the community if it's provided to people, and if people are better educated. Again, it tells you people don't just want to swallow the drug, they want to know why they are swallowing the drug. Why are you giving me OPV vaccine? Why are you asking me to eat 3 times daily? Give me a logical reason for it. And again, that tells you the world is changing, the world is becoming more global, and tomorrow will be better if education remains where we are. Cost effectiveness, we are still I'm not going to be sharing that with you because we are still in the middle of gathering data and doing more detailed analysis. Hopefully, in the nearest future, as we continue to work with University of Washington, we'll be able to share these narratives side by side and help inform our government with respect to policy. And there have been challenges. There's no project, an equivalent project like this has its own challenges. We are moving from one sociocultural divide to another. Again, we had issues with respect to community registers. You have to go ask for census. These were immediately rectified. Also documentation, daily census data verification and validation. Mobilization was done using the community drivers. We are not bringing people. Speak Up Africa ends in the capital, and then once they are going from the capital to the interlocks, to the last mother, then you have to use the community voice, the town criers, who have been at the forefront of doing this. And then, how to reach areas you have to decentralize. There are some areas you cannot reach, either because of mobility or for security issues, which has been on the rise across every part of the world. And so we have to decentralize to coordinate, and then everybody gets back to capital. And these have been quite effective for us. And again, that is taking back the project to the people, not you being the driver. So NIMR sits quietly and the people drive the project. And that has worked for us. Not us being at their face, but they doing it, being trained, doing it rightly, and also monitoring as we monitor side by side with them to ensure service is better delivered. Emphasize on state ownership. We are doing that because, again, insecurity. MBA timeline, we have to extend for various issues in some of the states. But again, we are rolling out now, and it's been successful. For religious and cultural barriers, we are not only using the CBDs, we are shaking hands with the religious leaders, with the community leaders. As we get into some of those communities, the first place you beckon is to say, good morning there, community leader. We are here for this cause. I have a meeting with them before we roll out. Because again, we want them to own it. We want them to see it as their own. Things have to change from this government that is saying. It has to be we are saying it. And that's the aim for that. And again, that's the aim also for continuous community dialogue and meetings as we go forward. These are some of the few learnings that we can quickly extract for you, and which we have adopted, and which again we are going to be adopting in the next few days as we get back to Nigeria for the third cycle of the project. The immediate next step is to complete SARMAAN 1. And because of this crude effect, and also effects that are being reported across Africa, there is the demand to expand, not just within the 1 to 11 month age, but again to expand the base to 1 to 59 months, so that will help protect more children, reduce mortality indices, and then make sub-Saharan Africa safe for every child. This would not have been possible without the support of the Department of Family Health, who is the policy lead. They work side by side with us at Nigerian Medical Research, but they sit with the minister and they'll be making the policy. The National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, who is the primary custodian of the polio immunization platform and the routine immunization platform. The NMEP, who are the owners of the SMC, they are the custodian. Without them, if they didn't give us that opportunity, then the WHO recommendation would have been a futile effort. Site savers, who are implementers, they've worked into the space, they are masters with respect to Azithromycin, with collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Health. And then Bill and Melinda Gates, I have put some specific names there. They've been drivers. They wake you at the end of the night, even when you don't want to wake up. We appreciate it. University of Washington, for every time, almost every month, Ariana and her team will come for a meeting. We've been here for 2 weeks. It's been at learning implementation science, speaking the language of implementation science, contextual. I'm gradually becoming an implementation science expert. Thank you very much. And for everyone you brought, from the microbial team, epidemiology team, they've been highly supportive, ready to share with us and ready to learn from us as we learn from them. And again, that is capacity and capability building. Without all these, the states, if they are not open their doors, then WHO recommendation will have ended the books. We sincerely appreciate them. They are not here. And again, this is the team, but this goes beyond this. And then for every field worker who has been in supportive, who have worked the work with us, make this a success and try to put Nigeria on the right limelight amongst its contemporary in the world. Thank you.
I think we have time for questions. Do you want to moderate any questions online, and maybe we can start with the question in the room?
Yes, sorry, I need to sign back on to that.
Okay, we'll start with questions in the room. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was a really wonderful talk, and it's such an impressive and huge project. It's amazing. My name's Kirk. I'm one of the faculty members here. I wanted to ask a question about de-implementation of azithromycin MDA. I think we know, or we expect that this intervention will only work for a short period of time as the country develops, and as we all develop. At some point, it is likely that azithromycin MDA will stop being effective. So I wondered if you have thoughts about how the current project will feed into the thinking about when azithromycin should be de-implemented, and also if you have thoughts about how this amazing partnership and collaboration you've built could be used to figure out when you should stop doing this intervention.
Can I take on the questions?
I think go one at a time. Yeah.
Okay. So, Prof, okay, let me answer, and I'm sure Prof. Yes, we are looking at that. We understand that we need to also understand where do we stop. It's a good question, and it's a question that WHO is looking at. Good thing is that in the next few months, a national demographic survey will be done, where again we'll have a look at our mortality indices. But the guideline is that once it's less than 60 or less than 80, we should put a stop to it. That's one. The other thing is to look closely at the antimicrobial resistance. If you are having a trajectory rise beyond what is scary, I would say what is scary again, the definition is not clear. But for Nigeria, what would it put it at is we have a rise of more than 10%, more than 12.3% of what model are reported at community population-based level. Then we might have to retrace our path and hold on and review what we are doing. In addition to that, I don't know whether there are other.
Yeah, I will just add that. Thank you, Abideen, and thank you. I will just add that for us, antimicrobial resistance, the fear for that is it's very important. But for us, especially in northern Nigeria, so many children are dying. It's a trade-off. You are afraid of future AMR that will happen, and children who are currently dying. So it's actually a trade-off. In the northern Nigeria, the number of children dying, especially in a place like Kano, is huge. So we are now more focused now on reducing that number of deaths. And while we are watching, luckily for us, what we are seeing from the literature, see, once you give a single dose of azithromycin, by 6 months, when you're supposed to give another one, the level of AMR goes down. It's a trend of when you give that, you clear the box in the population. Then only a very little percentage will actually have the box that, and then a much lower percentage will have the resistance. So the issue is that at what level do you trade off saving women, children's life, than thinking of possible AMR? And that's why WHO recommended that for countries, once you are under one mortality, infant mortality gets dropped to 60, you are no longer supposed to do that. But we are way off. Some of the, especially in northern Nigeria, the southern Nigerians are better, but in northern Nigeria, we are far away from 60 and 80. And that's what we are doing. We are doing the WACh the SARMAAN 2 project. We'll continue monitoring the antimicrobial. At the point in time, we think that this, and we have a national stakeholders meeting that involve public health physicians, pediatricians, antimicrobial infectious disease experts that will meet every 6 months, every cycle. After every cycle, we present the result, vis-a-vis what we are achieving, and also the NIMR rates. And this committee will decide at which point to say enough is enough. It's not us alone that takes that decision, but at the national level, we call stakeholders meeting every 6 months, and everybody sits down and look at what we are getting and what we are achieving. And I'm sure with that collective expertise and experience, we're able to decide when to say enough is enough.
Do you think, would it be politically and socially acceptable to continue in some provinces and stop in others, or would that create disparity?
Yes, ethically, let me wear my ethics cap. You are talking a place like Kano, so much children are dying. Why in a place like in southern Nigeria, where I'm from, you will just say that the infant mortality is less than 60. So you can't say you treat each community, we're talking about equity, treat each community with what they need. In Sokoto, you need to stop the children dying. What it means that you continue implementing. While in those southern states that have very low this, you don't need to implement that. Because WHO have said, if it's less than 60, you don't need to. That the AMR that may emerge will outweigh the benefits. So I think it's a trade-off depending on the community where you're going to implement.
Something we've been talking about over the past week is like you might end up with a decision-making tool at a local government LGA area that weighs all the information that you're learning about AMR now, baseline child mortality, cost effectiveness, availability of a platform to layer this onto, like the immunization platform, seasonal malaria, chemoprophylaxis, polio, trachoma MDA. And you might think of like using a tool like that, thinking about a timeline that, again, built off of what you're learning now. But as many of you are aware, like the current WHO guidelines just say to monitor antimicrobial resistance. They don't talk about a threshold at which to like put up those warning signs, like you said, or to scale back. And I think that's where this project will have a big contribution, so that you can present a realistic measure of what might be expected when you implement this over a 5-year time period at scale, for people to be able to make some of those decisions about when to scale down.
We'll also be flexible in terms of allowing other people to say, oh, this is what you are seeing, I think this. We'll be very flexible, and that's the sense of what we are doing here. We are sharing our results. We are not keeping it, we are not focused on the publication per se, but we are more focused on saving more lives and then also sharing with people. Also to make sure that as we are doing that, we remain ethically relevant and ensuring equity.
Question online. How are we able to drive uptake in other states? It's been a learning one. We've adopted the tools in the states. Most importantly, the states and their tools have been the source of drive. Adopting the community drug distributors, the town criers, the religious leaders, and even the jingles are the language of that state, not the language of communication in Nigeria. So if you are in northern Nigeria, the jingle is in absolutely Hausa. And so as that is played on the radio, and again, there are role plays in communities to educate people, to inform them of this. So those are some of the tools or strategies we have adopted. And again, as we go in the next circle, the news are spreading. Mothers who have received it are telling people the good stories. So that's what we are used to.
Yeah, let me also add that in terms of engagement, before we go to any community or state, we engage the states. A state like Kano, we have to engage them almost 3 times, four times eventually. 4 times. We have to have meetings at different levels. At the first set of people when discussed, there were no headway. We are now increasing who goes to that. The last one I was there, and we presented what is the literature and asked their opinion. And there was a consensus before we get into the community. So by the time you get to that community, once they accept that, uptake becomes because they become the driver. Now we finished, we're in one local government in Kano and Sokoto. And the question that people are asking us now is that, why are you not covering the entire states? I got an email because in the informed consent, my email and phone number is there. And I got a WhatsApp message from my father who says, why is my daughter not getting the drug? Why? So we've engaged the communities in such a way that people are beginning to ask questions. Why am I not involved? Kano and Sokoto have said, we want you to come and blanket the whole states. So we are trying to make sure that it's not just these two-driven activity, but rather we are involving the states, the states, the particular state, and the owners of the platform we are going to use.
I think we can say that in addition to all we've said, in terms of the community drug distributors, the people we used to distribute the drugs, they're actually volunteers, members of the communities that they know, that they trust. So when they bring in those drugs, they're familiar faces, so they're willing to accept the drugs that are being distributed.
Both the research assistants and everywhere is from the community. We are not taking, our researcher is also facilitated and do the training. So once we get to the place, we'll train the state select research assistants, drug distributors from the community. And we'll spend 3-4 days training them on the tools we are going to use. Ours is just to monitor that they do what we expect them to do. So with that, it's like you're going to a house. This is a familiar paper, someone I know, different from if I move from Lagos to Kano and start giving drugs.
Yeah, I mean, so many questions. Thanks for that wonderful presentation. I wonder if you could speak a little bit to the logistics of setting this surveillance setup specifically like the microbiology surveillance, because I mean, growing Salmonella and Shigella requires a cold chain of samples. And I know this is part of WHO recommendations to like have AMR surveillance, but in most settings, to best of my knowledge, like that doesn't exist. So it would need to be built with these types of programs. So I wonder if you could comment on that. And then my I guess question is, I really appreciate your point that like you're decreasing carriage of many of these pathogens, which has a morbidity benefit. So even if you are seeing an increase in AMR, it's among a smaller subset of pathogens. So like from a morbidity perspective, it's probably decreasing morbidity. Are you thinking about any kind of morbidity surveillance that could complement this argument when you're trying to make this argument? Because it's often not it's like kind of a nuance that I feel like a lot of people don't appreciate until you really are familiar with this literature and this data. And then I also wondered, are you looking at other antibiotics other than azithromycin? Because again, I work mostly in Kenya, and azithromycin really isn't in any guidelines. It's not used at all. So sometimes we make the argument like, okay, maybe you see a little bit of increase in azithro resistance, but it's not being used. There's no evidence of cross resistance to beta-lactam. So like, who cares if you're saving children's lives? Kind of, you know, so a lot there.
Thank you. These are important questions. But the logistics, all the states have the cold chain, but what we also did is to get a -80 feeders into each of the states, and some of the local governments where they have where they don't have, so that when you bring your samples back in the transport media that we have provided, we can bank them in the state before moving it centrally to Lagos, because all analysis is done in Lagos. And for states that have a supportive, well-functional cold chain system, we again move from that 2 days before we move out, or a day before we move out, to their -80, so that we get it closer. And then we have an expert who moves samples and who has worked with us across, again, within community survey, malaria, resistance, and other fields with respect to Shigella. So that is what we used. And again, once you get back into Lagos, immediately it goes into a -80 freezer, and samples are analyzed in batches following the standard operating procedure for the project. So again, it's empowering the states to have more cold chains Again, we need to support them with power. We got to support them, get a functional generator. And it's true by some of the states that will work 24 hours. And as we start to speak with the states that they need to increase their capacity with respect to surveillance when we exit, because when we like, whether we like it or not, it's going to move up research mode at some point in time, and the state must be ready to do that. So the states are also looking at that. For mobility surveillance, like I said, this is just a peep into the data we've collected. Yes, it's more of parental recall with respect to diarrhea diseases, pneumonia, using the basic definition of fast breathing, cough, and fever, and then febrile illnesses. There is also something we are doing on the side, which is primarily funded by the institute. If you look again at malaria with respect to Azithromycin, looking at molecular markers, whether the progress of malaria will. But that is beyond the scope of this project. It's not within the SARMAAN enclave, but I'm sure in the nearest future we'll be sharing that, and I'm sure we'll be telling a story about that. Yeah. With respect to other antibiotics, in SARMAAN 2, we are already thinking big of that, and that has generated from discussions we've had in the last 1 week. I think that we look at other antibiotics, the cephalosporins, the beta-lactam, and the fluoroquinolones, which are all the common antibiotics that are used in our ecosphere, so that we understand, yes, AZT is not increasing, like you said, because it's expensive, not everybody has ability to afford it, but what is happening to the other antibiotics that is in our population? Are we creating another board? How do we control it? So we are starting to look at that, and as we scale up in SARMAAN 2, that is a big decision on the board that we are not trading for anything.
Thank you so much.
Somebody asked a question on how do we monitor safety? Yes, monitor safety. So again, SARMAAN is not parallel to the existing platforms. It's in the existing platforms. So they already have a machinery of how to monitor acute surveillance or adverse events. So they adopted that. In addition, we are doing a 6-month recall, again, to be able to validate whether there were reports or not. In the future, we are even thinking much more that we develop within our project a pseudo surveillance, another surveillance parallel to the implementers, where we are on the field within 72 hours as researchers to ask the questions at their adverse events as they do theirs, but parallel to their own, and not mixing people who will be doing that. So these are some things we are looking at. Yes, it's going to require more training, more staff in on the field for a longer time, but I think it's worth doing it. If really you are going to be saving that child and helping the child prevent an unwanted body in the future.
All right, just to clarify that, you're saying that each of the platforms that you're leveraging has a unique way that they are, through that platform, monitoring AEs. So those are distinct across platforms. And then that's like a standardization. The study itself has a 6-month recall. Are you looking at like the...
Yeah, so before we rolled out on each of the platforms, we decided to standardize the adverse event monitoring tool of different platforms together. So NMEP, malaria people were there, NTD were there. So we looked at what is in your own adverse event monitoring form that is not in theirs. And then that will be of importance with respect to what was incorporated and was accepted and printed. So we have a uniform platform across board. Yes, you might see different names, but SMC adverse event monitoring form is the same thing as NTD. It's the same as the MP. I think I've answered, how did you determine antimicrobial resistance? This was done using the CLSBI. I would have shown that, and it's at a particular breakpoint, I think greater than 13 for azithromycin. That's what was used. And if you have anyone greater than that, then you start antimicrobial resistance. And so, again, for the first cycle, we did some standardization. Yes, cultural sensitivity in close marking with molecular, and we saw similarity. And again, we are asking ourselves, we are going to, in this time and age, we are going to scale up in Nigeria not every site state will have molecular. So second cycle, we have used basically cultural sensitivity and randomly sampling 10% of the whole sample again molecularly to see if what is detected is as is same. And again, it's shown close similarity, and we are still comfortable with going further using cultural sensitivity, which is going to be more simple, readily available, easily accessible, and you can train any microbial, any microbiologist or basic laboratory lab scientists on how to use that in the villages when it is at the surveillance level.
I think we need to wrap up. I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Salako and the rest of the NIMR team for taking the time both to come to the University of Washington and present to the Global WACh and UW community. I know there's some pending questions online and in the room, so if it's okay, maybe people can email you or